People don't want turn-based games anymore. All right, you know what? I've tried my darndest to find that quote that everyone keeps using whenever someone talks about this game, and for the life of me, I just can't find it. I see references to it, but the quote is never consistent. All I know is that it came from Square Enix and that they seem to think that players aren't interested in turn-based games anymore. But I think it's safe to say that that couldn't be further from the truth. Baldur's Gate 3, Divinity Original Sin 2, XCOM, South Park, Stick of Truth,
and fulfill your
Come on, all of those are turn-based and all came out great. So I have no idea where they got this sentiment from. Now that's not to say that real-time combat isn't great either, and I will say that I am enjoying Rebirth a lot because of the real-time combat. However, that doesn't mean I want Final Fantasy to fully abandon its roots. And people are indeed still playing turn-based games, and I feel that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 should be added onto that ever-growing list. Now, it's been a while since I was fully invested in a turn-based RPG, but when one is done exceptionally well, I can't ignore it. The game doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but goddamn, it's one hell of a driver. The game takes a lot of different mechanics you find in other RPGs of the past and puts them into one. Combat is centered around resource management and careful timing, using a familiar action point system most RPG veterans will be familiar with, although it may still take a while to get a grasp of it as the UI can get pretty messy. Once you do get used to it though, it's smooth sailing. The combat order follows a visible timeline, much like Final Fantasy X, and the order can be altered with certain skills or attributes. But what really sets it apart is the real-time mechanics, which is either going to make or break the game for you, depending on your tastes. Just about every attack gives you a brief quick-time event to boost its power. So far, I've only had to press A at the right time. Easy enough. I mean, you've done this 100 times before, right? Right, but defending? Yeah. That's a different story. The game lets you dodge or parry pretty much every attack. Sound easy? Yeah. No. The window to dodge in this game is incredibly small.
So smooth.
Oh, what's that? You thought you were going to get a button prompt for this one?
You get nothing!
The game expects you to rely on tells in order to avoid getting hit. The game will announce each move right before an enemy performs it, but remembering each enemy's attack animation is already hard enough. Once in a while, a party member will call out to someone who's about to be attacked, which will give you just a fraction of a second to decide whether it's best to parry or just dodge.
Lune, watch out!
Now, to be fair, once you do get used to the timing of enemy attacks, it's actually pretty easy to avoid damage altogether. That is until you enter a new area and have to learn all the new enemies. Word of advice, don't ever take a break from this game. Like, ever. Unless you forget the timing. The thing is, I don't trust the game's attack animations. At all. Oftentimes I found it much easier to dodge by actually ignoring the screen and just listening to the sound of an attack to determine the exact nanosecond that I have to dodge. I say this because I swear to God, I've seen my character still get hit when they're clearly out of the way. Theoretically, I can assume that this would mean that it would be possible to play through the entire game without ever getting hit once, although actually achieving that is a different story. Now this is when a video comes out of someone doing just god damn it. But here's the thing with the dodging. Unlike other turn-based RPGs that feature real-time button presses, getting to grips with it here is absolutely required. There's no such thing as a bad dice roll resulting in either a miss or a glancing blow. If you don't dodge, you will get hit. Every time. Okay, now before I continue, I have to give a spoiler warning as I'm about to show the game's intro. The game is extremely famous for its incredible prologue, and I do have a lot to say about it. However, the game's tone heavily hinges on this moment, so if you want, you can go ahead and watch a full version of it elsewhere, as the version I'm showing here will be abridged for brevity's sake. If you do decide to just skip ahead without watching it in full first, just know that this is the part that probably sold me on the game, and in my opinion, is the most impactful part of this video. The game starts out with quite possibly the saddest prologue for a game that I've ever seen. And I don't mean the pathetic kind of sad. I mean the kind that's going to give you a case of the feels throughout the rest of the game. It starts during a festival in the city of Lemire, a fictional version of France. Gustave, the game's main protagonist, is out picking flowers on a rooftop. He's soon greeted by Mayo, I don't know, who says the game's first line of dialogue, which comes out as surprisingly dark.
If you're gonna give someone flowers, you should probably do it before they wither and die.
What, the flower? Or Sophie?
Ooh, dark. Sophie would approve.
Hey, I wasn't lying. As the player goes through the game's first set of tutorials, we then meet up with Sophie, who after a few exchanges with Gustave is accompanied by him as he takes her to something. Whatever it is, doesn't sound good, but it sounds like something Sophie had mentally prepared herself for.
Walk me to the harbour?
Yes.
Then, Madame, why didn't you join?
Me? I'm content with my life. I know what I can and cannot change.
As the player continues on exploring the festival and talking to others, the story leads on that the city's population is getting smaller at an accelerated rate, and that Sophie has volunteered for a rather dark event, a ritual even. Meanwhile, Gustave seems to be prepping himself for something a bit more active. Well, dark is right, but while Gustave's expedition is voluntary, Sophie's imminent activity is far from it. At the end of the road, we see an obelisk with the number 34 written on it. After what seems like a hallucination turned real, the number slowly changes to 33, as we see loved one after loved one slowly wither away, Avengers style.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I actually had to stop playing at this point to wipe away the process just exactly what I had witnessed. I had initially thought that Sophie and a bunch of others had volunteered, sacrificed themselves to empower some kind of device or weapon or God knows what in order to help defeat whatever evil is terrorizing the city. The game doesn't really spell it out for you, but after a while, it's not that hard to figure out. Yeah, they'll listen to me. I'm dumb. I mean, I guess I kind of assumed that based on Gustave, rightfully so, saying that he wasn't content with the way things were, even though she was.
I can't imagine what you're going through.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I've lived 33 good years. Look around. We've had our whole lives to prepare. We're all fine. Mostly.
I'm not fine.
You will be.
I mean, come on, that kind of sounds like this is all Sophie's choice. But then again, I guess that was the idea. The game was never direct about it, at least not so much early on, but if it wasn't obvious at this point, the premise of the game is that citizens of Lemire are cursed by some evil entity that causes everyone of a certain age to supernaturally pass away at a certain time every year, and that age gets lower as each year passes. At the same time, younger people, mostly those with only 1 year left, volunteer on an expedition to rid the city of whatever it is giving them that curse. And obviously, that hasn't been working out too well. This game's intro has completely changed my outlook on how games treat death. I don't mean when a character simply dies in battle, waiting for you to resurrect them. I mean permanently being killed off from the story. I used to think that if I were to ever play a game where such a tragedy happened in the beginning, that it wouldn't really be that big of a deal compared to other games where someone dies in the middle or at the end of the game. Yeah, of course it's devastating. You've played these games for how many hours and you've grown so attached to these characters. But here comes Clair Obscur just barely introducing someone before killing them off within the first few hours of the game. And I feel just as devastated as before. If a game can make me cry for the loss of a character that I barely even know, that means you got some damn good voice actors here, and that means I better see them in future games.
You know, I'm sorry that... I miss
you don't need to... Okay.
You go.
No, you.
You know how I feel? I wish things had been... You know, I often think... Another path, you know, another future.
Still can't finish your sentences, can you?
Yep, that hasn't changed.
I missed that. Stubborn people change the world. And you are the most stubborn person I know. Thank you.
If you're anything like me, your heart is probably sunk after the intro finally settles down. The game has just made it clear on exactly what you're in for, and from what I hear, that ain't even half of it. If other videos and memes are anything to go by, I'm going to have my heart sunk again at the end of Act 1. And yet, what surprised me is how quickly the game lets in a bit of levity eventually. Between the whimsical guest roles and the weirdly funny enemy designs, there's this almost surreal mix of beauty and absurdity, all within a landscape that appears to be mostly abandoned. It gives a feeling of playing Alice Madness Returns if it was less gothic, more fantasy. In a way, the world almost creates an illusion with its facade of beauty that almost makes you forget how hopeless everything actually is. And if I were to throw in another but less obscure game, yeah, it would definitely be A Valley Without Wind, another post-civilization setting where the world ended, but you're just wandering around the quiet aftermath. Of course, nothing is perfect, so there's one thing I don't like about the game. It would be how the game handles the acquisition of items. From what I did play, I did come across one town of sorts, but there was maybe only a couple of vendors, both selling very specific things and very few. In other words, not a whole lot, but what they do sell is significant. Instead, most gear is just handed to you automatically as you level up, and only found on the field occasionally. It's an interesting way of doing it. After all, it does make the grind worthwhile, but at the same time, the game throws money at you after every fight. I don't know, I guess I'm just used to either looting or buying my own gear instead of it just being handed to me as I level up, because that's usually for skills, not just weapons and equipment. And what you definitely won't find in vendors are typical healing items, as those work differently. Unlike other games, you can't just spend all your money on tons of them and be ready for virtually any disaster. You're limited to having just a few at a time. However, the amount is upgradable and can be replenished at save points. This offers the game a unique bit of strategy that you won't find in too many old-school turn-based RPGs, as save points become resupply merchants in a way, and it's free. I actually enjoyed this, as it meant I wasn't just carelessly killing every enemy that I saw, making way for a little cat and mouse chasing. Until now, most turn-based games hitting the market either came from small indie teams or high-budget anime-heavy franchises like Persona or Honkai Star Rail. But I think it's been a long time we've had a good turn-based game that didn't have an anime aesthetic, or it wasn't based on a D&D rule set like Baldur's Gate 3. This is really a good turn-based RPG, but the irony of it all is that I don't think true diehard fans of turn-based RPGs will be 100% comfortable with the game, mainly due to the dodging and parrying mechanics. Most games of the genre rely only on your tactical planning, with very little reflex required, if at all. If anything, navigating a menu fast is all that's needed from older games. So where does the game fit in the gaming industry as a whole? Let's get real here. Expedition 33 is downright embarrassing the AAA scene right now, and that's a compliment. This is the first game from Sandful Interactive. AAA has no excuse. They have no prior game development experience. There's no microtransactions to nickel and dime the player, and no half-assed live service that serves just to shoehorn online DRM requirements for an otherwise single-player experience. Just a focused, lovingly crafted RPG that puts gameplay, storytelling, and above all, the player first. And it works. It works because they did what other companies never do after so much success: take risks. They listened to the players instead of shareholders. Soundfall didn't need to do anything new, and to be honest, they didn't. But maybe, perhaps, it just needed to do something right. And it does.